please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States to the republic which is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for September 20th, Lower Salford Township Communications Committee meeting. First order of business is to approve the minutes from our August 23rd meeting. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look them over. Thank you, John, for printing them up. Any comments or changes, suggestions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as we receive them?
I will motion that.
Jean, thank you. Second. Jess, appreciate it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's our approved or nothing. Thank you. Next order of business is the call for public discussion or visitor comments. As always, we open it up for anybody who'd like to contribute anything for the record, including members of the committee. Any public discussion? All right. Seeing none, we're going to move right along. So old business, last week we did talk about text message alerts, or not last week, last month. We talked about text message alerts. And it was our intention. I know we had 2 meetings with the board to kind of have their feedback. John prepared a great list of what we felt we would recommend that we should send text messages out to the township. I had that paper in front of me and I couldn't find it right now. I actually was here earlier this morning, so I went out to the car, but hopefully we all saw that list. And some of them were alerts for upcoming meetings. Obviously, we already have emergencies, and this is through the Ready Monco. So the first meeting that I brought it up with the board, we discussed it. Everybody, the board members' consensus was all for it. They thought it was a great recommendation. So after discussion, I made a motion that we enact that as a policy. It was second and unanimously voted. So great job to everybody here, and board passes that on as well. But now for all residents, our next goal will be to try to figure out how we can let people know that we have that option. So people who may already have Ready Monco will now have to click non-emergency as another option to receive text message alerts. And we did determine that it might not be a good idea to reach out to everybody via emergency only. So another way that we can get that out there. But I think it's great news. I was very excited and pleased, and I know the rest of the board was excited to hear that too. And I know John and I were just discussing, I don't know if you two also received text messages for our upcoming board meetings, which is great. You know, it's just another way for people to know that something's happening. And you know, if people see that, they might say, hey, you know what, this affects me, I'm going to be there. So I think
I only have like a kindergarten phone. I don't have a really smart phone. So I can get text messages on here, but I don't know if they're going to come through
no worries.
automatically or not. But anyway, it's still a good thing.
It's you get text messages, it ought to come through.
Yeah, it should.
And thank you to John. Thank you to everybody for preparing that. Thank you for everybody. And thank you, Holly, for discussing with Ready Monco and figuring out what capabilities we have. So looking forward to see how that affects things moving forward. I think, and you know, another discussion is, or another thing we should talk about, as we have, is how we can let people know. Obviously, we do have other means for people to receive information, but this is a new one that people who might prefer this method might not be aware of yet. But great job on that. I think it was wonderful. Any other comments or questions regarding the text messages? The next old business was resident welcome letter packet. I also spoke, I sent out an email to the board to kind of give them that idea, and spoke informally with members of the board this morning as well regarding, you know, their take on a welcome letter packet. The consensus was to go for it. You know, they're intrigued by the idea. In fact, I told them, as we discussed, that one of the things that we ran into is how do we find out who came here? You know, obviously we wouldn't want to do something with a cost, and that was mentioned as well. But one suggestion by one of the members of the board was maybe perhaps a homeowners associations where we have, you know, the new developments coming in, rather than try to reach out any other way. We can reach out to the homeowners and say, hey, you know, as we already have, we also talked about, you know, resident facilities. That's something that we've already covered. They have the welcome packets there. So that was a great start. So that's opens up another discussion on, you know, yes, we can do this. How do people get it out there for cable companies? How do people get it out there for postal? That's something that they pay for. Again, nobody really had an idea of the general price, but they weren't opposed to us looking into it, reporting back as well. So that's something that, again, we can discuss and continue with, but
Or I have some information.
perfect. And just for anybody watching and just recollect too, I know Dean, we were here, what I did mention to everybody too was what we kind of already included in our welcome packet with residential facilities, maybe perhaps a letter from the chair, welcome to the community, as well as our resident request portal. It was also mentioned kind of what we've already talked about is we do have options. Another option that we could do is perhaps paperless, where it's always cheaper. Another way like QR codes and, things that we already do have on our websites where there as well, but it's another way to explore, perhaps if there's a homeowners association, we could say, if you have an email, include this link in your email, let people know they can access our website. So that kind of idea too.
Well, I printed it out,
No worries.
but,
I don't watch the video of last month's meeting.
Okay.
I didn't make the meeting, so
Fantastic.
I'm up to date.
I do that sometimes as well, just with my own meetings. It's wonderful to have that routine.
so. We don't have these specifics, but I did look at a number of places who provide new resident information. Of the three that I looked at, the one looked like it would best fit all our needs, right? I mean, some of them are more geared towards big mailings and big, stuff, right? They're. Let's see, I look out the paper, I think it's called, Leads Please. Right, was the site. And you can, of course, select the demographics. In terms of geography, the geography is a little tricky. We probably have to do it by zip code, right? It's not gonna have something for lower Southward boundaries, right? We probably have to do something by zip code. You can do it for new residents in the past 3 months, 6 months, a year, or some custom range. So you get to pick in what range you want to know new residents.
Okay.
So if you could do that around whatever schedule you're going to do for mailing, if you're going to do it every 3 months, every 6 months, you could get new residents based on that. There was a minimum charge, and based on the test query that I did, the charge would have been about $65 or so. So my guess is that assuming you do this like every 6 months, right, every 3 months, or every 6 months, right, you could probably do it for under $100 in terms of getting the news. That's not postage, that's just
Getting the information.
right? So for estimates purposes, I think $100, figure on $100 to get the names, and then whatever it costs us in postage.
Okay. That's good information. That's great thinking on. Now, my only hesitancy with the zip code, and I don't know if there would be a way to check, it's just I only know this because we stumbled upon this with our our packets that were going out, sorry, the words, mailers that we were hitting places that may have been Harleysville per se, Tolman's and White Township. So as long as we could dictate, make sure we could cross those off. That's fascinating.
Right, and that's the biggest challenge I saw is that you have to order residents based on zip codes, and then either manually take out the ones that are not within the actual lower Southward boundaries,
Right.
or just go with them.
And that's something we could even do at a meeting if we went that route. Okay, let's take these out so we don't incur any unnecessary costs, but
Yeah,
I think that's great, worthwhile to look into. Any other comments on that? And based upon, sorry, but I would say it's a lower cost than I had expected. I wasn't sure, how it would be or who markets to it or who, what type of people or businesses would use the services. So I figured it would be higher. That's good to hear.
well, and most of this, like I said, the other two that I looked at, would have been higher, but they're not geared for this kind of low volume, every
Right.
couple of months kind of things. This this health, the website was very conducive to that kind of. Our kind of need.
That's great.
Um,
Do you know if this also applies to renters as well?
from what I could read, it was any new resident.
Okay,
So,
and I just know when, when we moved, years ago, we were renting as well. Anytime we rent an apartment or whatever, we received like, welcome to the neighborhood. Thank you. Welcome to the neighborhood. Get these coupons, get those coupons. So people can reach them. It's just a matter of figuring out how.
right,
Any other comments? Okay, well, I think that's something that we can definitely look into and discuss further as well. Do we want to do that now, or should we continue on and mark that down now to explore? I think, as you said, that's great information there. Should we put that together in a packet? What will we want to do with that in the future?
Do you think it might take a little bit of time? Maybe it'd be a good idea to have it be a focus of at least part of, a major part of the upcoming meeting.
I think that's a good point. I think as we continue, we'll see where we go at the end of this meeting and kind of go from there.
Right.
Just wanted the extra approval there. Perfect. Thank you again, John, for doing that. Okay, our next order of business, any other comments for resident welcome letter packets? Again, I think the understanding of what would be a welcome letter would be maybe, again, something by the chair, welcome to the community, welcome to reference, which has everything.
is there any estimate as to how many new residents we get in a year?
I don't think so. It's hard to track. I know we've discussed before, like we could, in a sense, know how many more homes that might be here, but if any particular land or somebody rents and whatnot, we wouldn't be able to dictate that, I don't believe. So I don't think there's a fine number. I think when we talked about before, we said something like 80, I feel, or something, and we came up with that number somehow at a meeting. I don't know if anybody knows, but I don't think there's any clear way, a definitive way we could know right now.
But even that number, I'm just using, and I forget, sorry, I misplaced my literature. But when I did my test query, I think it came back with 100 and some. And I forget whether that was a 6-month range or a 1-year range, right? But it was 100 and some, and it's like, I don't know whether that's
Right.
close or not, right?
Yeah.
But if you think it's 80 or somewhere.
And I don't even remember where that number came from. I feel like we had a discussion where we did something, and it might have been 180 or something. But
Yeah.
I think I guess what you're saying is we know that we have a ballpark number. I agree. I don't even want to speculate. I don't know, how much it would be. I can't imagine it being too high, but I hope people would hang out, stay a little bit. But
So you use a service like this, and you may not know how accurate it are until you do the first one.
Right.
You get the first list of, let's say it's 150.
Yeah.
And you look at it, you scratch out the ones you think are outside the boundary and make your own assessment as to how accurate they are, and then use that as kind of a pilot, and then decide whether to continue using that service or not.
I think it's great. And I think our first thing would just be make sure we can go ahead and do that, make sure the township's on board or recommends that we go that route, and I'd be happy to assist with that. Let's go back to this step definitely tonight and see where we want to go with that, whether we want to put something together tonight or next meeting. But again, I think this is all very useful and great points. Any other comments? Okay. Moving on to C. More good news as well, and C is special sessions with facility management companies. Again, I also discussed with members of the board the idea of having a meeting at another resident or at a residential facility offsite from the township. One thing that I used as reference, we discussed with the park board, we'll go to the different parks, and would we be able to do that as well? All 3 of the board members I spoke with had absolutely no problem with it and found it encourageable. I think it's a great idea, and it's a great way to reach residents. And as I said, it's a good way we can get more feedback from people, make it more easier, accessible for residents who might not be able to come here. So they said there's no problem with that. And that opens up a whole nother discussion too, of something we can put together and figure out how we would want to do that. And of course, reach out to the residential facilities and see if they would like us there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
how would we handle the publicly available aspect of that, like, we're on Zoom now, but how will we handle that if we're on site?
Great question. One thing that I would bring, I would obviously check with the rest of the township is, well, actually, Holly, you don't at the moment record offsite meetings, right? At the park board, do they record those meetings? I would have no problem as long as the board's okay with setting up, I have the meetings of, tripod. I put my phone up there, which I've been able to hook up here. Or whatever means they would want to use, whatever kind of device, but I think that's something that as long as it would be okay with the other members of the board, to facilitate that, I don't see it as an issue. He might not be as great of a camera, as great of a microphone, but I think we could, if we put it close enough, even if we just had an audible only to make it accessible for people. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something I thought of and would definitely make sure that that is a viable option we could do. And
Yeah.
perhaps it's a matter of bringing a computer and.
Yeah, I was
using
gonna
their
say.
facility, Wi-Fi and whatnot.
Right, exactly, it would probably a laptop would be
Yeah,
better,
and
something portable.
and I'm familiar with, as we said, using a Zoom, we could always do, because sometimes here, when I've been in those roles, I could make myself like a co-host perhaps and, utilize that so we can keep that in. But I do think that if we were to do this, that is something that I'm glad you mentioned. That's something that we'll make sure and kind of discuss with them.
Yeah.
Do that as well, because that's one of the whole points is keeping it accessible for everybody. I'd hate for somebody that would be the night they were gonna come and not have to be able to see it.
Exactly.
The one night where somebody had a great question.
But worst case, if it's said,
Mhm.
no Zoom this week,
And they would always, any meeting always has to be advertised and known, so I don't think that'd be a problem, but yeah, and hopefully though, we can have that accessibility. I hope we can. I don't see it as a problem, I can think of a lot of ways to do that. That down too. But I think it was a great idea that, the committee had and the board feels that way too, so I'm looking forward to doing that in the near future. Any other comments on that? Thank you for your scheme. Okay. So again, that's something else that we can mention at the end of this meeting, make sure, what we want to do with that, our next steps, but I think that's something we can do very soon. Our next order is yearly update to the township quick reference guide. Again, what we talked about last time is we do have our quick reference guide and hopefully it's been out there. I don't know if we should have mentioned, did anybody see it in the Indian Valley community newsletter? It was in there. That's great. Thank you, Holly. So that was great to see. But if you did see it, and one thing I noticed too, I think it says version 1 or volume 1, is our first, and it's great. Obviously, phone numbers and stuff will change, and we did discuss how we want to update that. And I believe that's what this is. I think we talked last time, do we want to do it, something that make it a yearly thing at the beginning of the year, or how we want to do that. And I open that up for discussion.
I would think it would be feasible for us to just decide that say at our first meeting of the year, of the calendar year. We would do the update and get it out, or our last, probably our last meeting of the previous calendar year would be good, because then you have holiday issues and whatever, but I would think the first meeting of the year, we could tackle doing that and then get it out right away.
Perfect. And that's exactly why we discussed it last time, knowing things are coming up. Do we want to do it next month? Do we want to do it the first month? I have no issue either way, but I think first order of business would just to make sure it's updated. It's not a bad idea.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on that? And of course, to do that, I think we could probably, make sure, obviously, before we do that, I could check with the resources that we have right beforehand, and everybody could just kind of report. I don't think it'd be too difficult to do there. Okay, first meeting of the year.
That was originally driven from what's on the website. Holly, do you know offhand, I have the contacts on the website changed? Have you added or removed any of the list?
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Only just political offices and since last year's election.
Okay.
Like this, I go through it every now and then. I'm really only aware of things within internally if something changes. Like, for example, if there's a new Boy Scout leader or Girl Scout leader, those are things that have to be mentioned to me or like help to me. So if there are changes, sometimes I'm not aware, someone makes me aware. I don't go through that list of things I do go through every now and then. Links to websites, but often people personally contact. It could be different, especially like the JCs or the Rotary. Those people have been president every year. They're very lax at calling and saying, hey, get me president. So, but if there's a link to a website, the name usually isn't super duper important. Someone can get to a website, get a phone number or an email and go from there.
So my thought there is if we're going to discuss at the our January changes and updates, then we ought to test those links, like for lack of a better term. We ought to go through and test the websites that are there, make sure that they're still active to the best that we can. Call the numbers, right, and verify that the numbers are still accurate, so that in January, we had that information to say, yes, this is still good, no, I found something that, a broken link here.
That way we can have a result that night as opposed to, oh, okay, we'll follow up with this more, right? That's
You're another month away.
Yeah. So even perhaps at the end of the year, we could say, there's 5 of us, I forget how many references we have, but maybe 4, 4, 4, 4, if there's 20 or whatnot, just to follow up on. I think it's a great point.
We could even to do that at our November meeting and then have the results at the December meeting. So that, stuff's gonna be up there right at the beginning of the year,
I think that's even
any
better.
changes.
Right, so I'll put November meeting, discuss on the agenda. And Holly, I'm glad you mentioned the Boy Scouts, because if I recall, once you said that too, that's one of the first things I thought of, scouts, because I think anything volunteers, they're given their time, it's enough to be there in that position. And that's the first thing I think we ran into. Fortunately, we have a liaison Boy Scouts on the board, so I think that was the first thing Supervisor Canavan said, oh, wait a minute, different Boy Scout leader, those things do change. And then we noticed the Girl Scouts too. Yeah, so November, we can, we'll put on the agenda in November that we will assign different people to follow up.
Right.
Follow up on our reference, review in December, and be ready to approve for the new year.
Yeah.
Great. That's a good plan. Thank you for.
So related but not specific to that. The we now have the township now has laminated copies of those lists in park kiosks. I see those all the time, and they're holding up well.
Okay.
Right. For what it's worth, the maps are not. The maps are kind of fading and deteriorating, similar to the way the quick reference guide did when that was put up online. Right? So suggestion, right? Again, kind of unrelated to the list, but if you're going to have the maps in the kiosks, I think they should be laminated also.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just looks bad.
No, that's great. And I think that's something that can be done. If we just mentioned, Holly, would that be more park board, or is something that we can just look into with the office? That's what I'm thinking. Thank you. Yeah, that's
The public looks fun.
awesome. So yeah, we'll get that done. That's a great point. And
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, the laminated quick references seem to be holding up.
It's
pretty
very
good.
good.
Yeah. That's what you're saying. They look good. They're in comparison to the maps. It's now
Right.
noticeable.
Yeah. The whole.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Holly. Any other comments for the quick reference guide? Thank you for the suggestions. I think we have a good plan. November assigned, December over, and we should be ready by January. Yep. E, resident outreach programs committee. Can this be combined with offsite communication committee meetings? And this I feel is something that that we can open up for discussion here. I think we kind of touched on this a little bit. We weren't sure how, whether we could go on site and have meetings, but now that we can do that, that also kind of opens up that door too. So I think we kind of see that we could have a whole discussion, I think, on a topic with both of those, whether we want to have some kind of committee, how we want to go forward with that. Any other comments on this here? I think that's what we were trying to do, is just kind of see, how do we want to reach out to these, this and that. But I think personally now, if we go to a facility, I think that should be our next thing. Okay, we're here. Now we can have a conversation, and obviously in getting there and going to facilities, it starts a conversation too, reaching out to them. Hi, how are you doing? We're checking in. So maybe our next order would be, I'm thinking to kind of combine both of these, reaching out to the facility saying, we'd love to come to you, what else can we do? And then deciding where we are in regards to what they need.
Seems to me, two things I think we need to consider.
Okay.
One is I think what you're alluding to is how do you communicate it out there? And I think in my mind, that breaks down to the facility itself. If we're gonna be in a facility, I think, that we should figure out some way to make sure that everybody in that facility knows about it. Whether that's a bulletin board or a notice or through their management, but if we're gonna get people, hopefully they would, at least people in that facility would be interested enough to attend. The other thing is communicating that to people outside of that facility and what channels we use to do that. Kind of gets back to our topic of what channels we have available, everything from our roadside bulletin board
Which is what we're getting
to right. But how do we get out that we are going to be at this facility in this particular month?
And it doesn't have to be, sorry to interrupt, but you're right, it doesn't have to particularly be just those residents. Somebody might live, oh, you know what, I live just a few doors down, let me come over there. So it's a great point.
Do you think the facilities themselves would be receptive to that, to have people who are not affiliated with the community coming into the community solely for the purpose of our meeting?
That would be something that we would have to mention to facilities, and I think that's why it's worthwhile to have a whole discussion first, and that's exactly what I was looking to see where they stand and all.
Right.
That's a great point,
Right.
because I'm not sure, honestly, that might not be something in regards to a bulletin board, how we can communicate within the facilities. I know in the past, they have no problem and said they would send emails, so they have emails to residents. Some of them have had bulletin boards and utilize them too. So I agree with that. Outside of facility, that's literally our next topic here as well, of other ways. But they're great points, John and Dean as well. These are something that we would have to address. So can we have, I'm actually, I think just write something down. Can we have others? Go ahead, John. And again, whether we discuss that tonight or next time, I'm thinking that can we have other members of the community? Can we record some of the questions that be worth discussing before going?
So you were saying combine two things, and it made me think, well, maybe there's a third thing we can combine here. That's the review of the quick reference guide. And get input from at least that facility. I mean, again, hopefully we get some attendees, right? But have an agenda item of general interest
And interactive.
The quick reference guide is one of those things that may be of general interest, right, to lots of people, either because they have something on that list that is of interest to them, or simply because it's not too specific. Right?
Or what is lacking, something that we might be.
Right. Right, exactly. I mean, something that they could contribute to, have input and say to, right? Versus us having agenda topics that.
Like to sit and watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we can take.
But to have something like a review of that topic, who's on there, why they're on there, suggestions in terms of who else should be on there. It sounds like a topic that would be general interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. On that note, then, I think quick reference, I agree with you, that's one great thing. Any other things we can think of just now that we could put on there, like. I mean, obviously like a Q&A kind of thing, but we don't, that's almost like reserved for a whole nother event, you don't want to go too far, but maybe something in regards to residential facilities, what other things would you like,
Mhm.
what other things would you like conveyed, or other things would you like, or suggestions, I think. Just emphasizing, don't forget, we have a public discussion with suggestions might be
Yeah, I
great as
think
well.
it would be nice just to ask, like, do you know about these resources?
Yeah.
For communication, like,
Yeah, it's. 'Cause
just to
that,
get like a,
that could answer a
idea
lot of
how
our
many, yeah.
questions, and, people might pull out their phone and say, oh, well, now I do, that's,
Right.
Mhm.
I think these are great ideas. And I would suggest, just based on all this that we have, because this kind of does go with what we were previously talking about, that we definitely put this down for next meeting. As one of our discussions, because then we can also figure out what timing would be appropriate, as we approach the new year for the residents. Great. Great things there. Any other suggestions on this? Go ahead.
You know. Which of the facilities is the largest, or which would have a meeting?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what would be the largest. I do know, have guesses. And again, I know that facility wise. I know that the Birches has, areas, I'm pretty sure Montgomery Woods, they have like a main facility, but and they do events. I'm not sure
Yeah.
where they do them, because I know within discussions, they've been very supportive of that as well. Pheasant Run, or not Pheasant Run, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure with all of them off the top of my head, but I know a couple of them have said, yeah, we do have meetings here and residents do get together, because that's what brought up the idea of, we have meetings here where we have Q&As, we have people come in that, spurred the interest of us, so. No, unfortunately, I don't want to give wrong information, so I'm not sure. I have speculations, but
I was just thinking in terms of
Size.
where you start with the largest to the smallest, and you kind of go down the list from largest to smallest, and just keep asking, hey, can we do this at your facility? And go to the next largest one,
yeah.
so you find one who.
And it might be something that somebody might prefer. I know park board, things are outside, they can go outside and have a meeting like that. Maybe that's something that could be preferable for a set facility that might not have the means to support. These are great questions that we have to discuss. I'm not sure which ones, and that brings us to another thing, is which ones do we go to? If somebody says, come here, we're ready right now, we could do that as well. But if someone says, oh, think about it. I think it's definitely worth a discussion for the full meeting here on that. Yeah, I'm still thinking, I can think, picture the rooms, but I'm not sure. Any other comments on that? I think this kind of brings us into our next topic as well, so I kind of don't want to go too far away from this, but the document our township communication tools and channels. And we kind of, John, you alluded to this a little earlier, is after we obviously figure out a way to let the residents know at facility, how do we convey this to the townships? What kind of options do we have available? I believe that's what this topic was meant to discuss, correct?
Just us compiling a
What we have
list.
available.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
and with some of these parameters that could be used.
Okay, yeah. So that said, what kind of channels does the township use in regards to reaching out to residents? And for that, I can definitely list a few off the top of my head. I might lean on you here, Holly, a little bit as well. But I know with right now, in regards to meetings, we do the text messages, but what we previously have done is everything is advertised to the paper, has to be advertised to the paper officially. It is posted on our website. we do send out a notice of our meetings, I guess, monthly with our communication channels that we have with the emails and whatnot. We list upcoming meetings and that. And at the bottom of our agendas currently also list future dates, upcoming meetings. We also put information out with our signs, our boards out there. The two on the highway. Holly, am I leaving anything out?
I'm having trouble discerning between tools and channels. I don't know what the difference is. I think of channel as something that. I'm understand what this.
Different ways that
And
we,
then. So, what's the channel? And what's the tool? Tool, the computer, and the channel, the website? I'm confused by the wording, that's all.
no worries. I think we're just exploring the different, yeah, you know, which ones or twos, like, what all the different means that we have of reaching people. Different means, I guess, there. In regards to tools, that could arguably be you in a sense too, the staff.
Yeah.
You put it out there and you know, which ways
Newsletter.
that we have. Newsletters, one, absolutely. Our monthly, I would say that's a challenge. That's what I would say,
It's a chat.
yes.
And it's
The different means that we use to reach. No. Well, let's put them together then and say, how do we reach residents? Everybody, we can do that. That's essentially what we're doing, and based upon what I listed, as you mentioned there too, our, you know, our emails, our flyers.
Yep.
Did I leave anything else out?
Wait, when you say flyer, what do you mean by flyer?
I worded it wrong. I'm thinking of the, I can't. You said it earlier, not the community, the monthly newsletter. Thank you, newsletter is what I was thinking. Thank you for mailing. Constant contact, thank you. Sorry for that, I meant newsletter. So what I did say was newsletter, road sign,
Constant contact is the tool.
eventually advertise in the paper, so that's out there as well.
Or
I believe it's the Independent right now. Do we do any other newspapers? That's what I thought. I wouldn't.
both of them, the Frankfurt and the Independent.
Also, another means, yes, the reporter and the Independent. It also, we put signs on the doors, of the township building, including the agendas for upcoming meetings.
And also, even some of those lesser ones like signs on doors, a bulletin board in the lobby.
Right.
I mean, they're all channels that we're using to reach people.
Somebody coming in for anything and then see that, it's like, oh, okay, you know, now it's another. Let me. Fairly sure that covers most, if not all, different channels we have. I can't think if I'm listening. I might be leaving something out, but.
Park kiosks.
Our kiosk, very good. Thank you. Anybody think of anything else that they may have noticed, seen? Facebook, I know the outfit uses the social media police. Which also relays the constant contact or, yeah, any other kind of information. Obviously, same thing that we do on our Ready Monco, you know, those things go out, are conveyed there, road closures, whatnot too. No, I think of one more. And that's a big one. I think that.
Is
might
there
cover
anything at
that.
the golf course? Is there a bulletin board or anything that gets posted at the golf course?
Inside the golf course?
Right.
But it's not, I'm not.
Or else,
Right, I know there's this outside sign, but
They have a.
that's worth,
I can,
that's worth looking into, I'm not positive.
use the signs at either end of the ship.
Yeah, signs, yes, there are signs.
And it's
like out,
two of them, is it two of them? One on each?
Two. And that's the first thing I think of when I think of ways, because that's the one I see the most, honestly. It's the first thing I put down, that road signs, I think that's effective,
Yeah.
at least for me, I'll notice that
Yeah.
more.
I'm sure they're labor intensive for somebody to go out there and change them, but I consider them an underused channel, right?
Yeah, I think,
A lot of people pass them, a lot of people see them and. Yet the messages don't seem to change that much. I'm sure it's. And who actually goes out and changes those things?
we have someone,
He's a.
okay,
I just sent him the information.
Super.
I told him to, when they're. Like maybe in between things, because we're not the only ones that puts that out there, service. Types of things, and I've actually seen it, so. Hey, right. Took more. So,
I noticed that, right?
Or.
I wonder if it might be worthwhile. It's a lot of words though, and again, I don't, just off the top of my head, way off subject, but the Ready Monco, as we said, how do we let people know you can sign up for that, not just text? You can get text, visit our website or something. That might be something good for the future, not to go too off topic, but yeah, that's
Well, it's kind of on topic in terms of.
Channels.
The next thing, next thing you do with these channels is. How do you utilize it? What's the limits in terms of letters or words or. There's, each channel and each tool for each channel has certain limits and strengths and weaknesses. And as you're saying, you don't want to put a whole paragraph on.
Right.
On the roadside sign, because there doesn't work.
you know what I mean.
Right.
Safety, right?
So to start. Identifying those kinds of attributes so that, again, you have a. List of not only the channels that you pick from, but the parameters by which you can use those channels.
Right. And what we have the capabilities to do,
We also have a budget side. They can take a.
Oh,
Yes, that's right. Absolutely.
But I think they really understand the situation. Each or.
Right.
And the.
I said it.
Fire company and also the country fair, Chase, they do, they have a banner. There's a banner that goes. But anything that happens on Route 63 has to go to that. So we fill out every year with this banner.
I do believe I saw the police. I'm not sure, but the police thing, I'm almost certain, advertising, I believe, Country Fair Days. Recently, so that was something else that I saw that was like, that was effective. It reminded me a few times of it. And I believe it was put up right by. If I'm at Cary Lane and 63 right around there, is near the Genesis, the south. Right.
Yeah.
So right, not too far from the sign, they had something with the Country Fair Days.
Sorry, I missed the begins at what type of.
This was the police, it's a digital sign, yeah, it's portable.
The one.
Yes, and I remember seeing that used for, I think, Country Fair Days. That too. Yeah, these are. And we'll probably think of one or two more after this as well, but in regards to the signs, we don't really have any signs that we put up. I mean, the JCs, we advertised it, we help, did they put that up, or that's not really? Cause I know which sign we see for the Country Fair Days, that was, I was like, as a kid, always looking forward to that.
We have cycle, some things.
Yeah, I don't, and in order to do that, we'd have to purchase a sign to say what we want, so I don't see that one as too viable, but.
It's a pretty so you just think of nothing in the code that you would not see lots of developer sign, you know, like the subdivision with an arrow, things like that, or on that corner. You just don't see those things in our township because they're not, directional signs allowed that says, you know, open house this way or anything like that. We allow you to bring some signs right down.
Like that, discussing the sign. That like, that video.
It's best, yeah. Or next, they just leave it in there and take them away or. The supervisor put those in place that were like years ago.
I think what we should do is we have these now, we could break each one down tonight, you know, what do we use, or we could rank each one of maybe. Usefulness, importance, how do we want to do that, proceed with this? So what we have are, we've already kind of discussed some of them, you know, we know how to get that road sign now, you know, we. Constant contact, we're grateful to Holly doing that, and
Well, I mean, this becomes a grid, right? And how much, for instance, like lead times? How much can we kind of fill in that grid in terms of lead times for each of these channels? Yeah. Text messages through Ready Mongo. Lead time on that. Yeah.
And we can check it right. For the building, they're doing a film. The award that the township
Right.
received for environmental stewardship. It's hard to go. I got back in before 25. And I haven't done any of this yet, so if something happens when I'm out of the office. Maybe I need, if I'm in the office, maybe 2 minutes, you kind of like, I'll need to get something.
But if what we listed was 24-hour notice.
so do we want to,
How about like newspapers, the 2 newspapers? How often are they published? What's the lead time if you want to get something?
And,
They're daily.
it's daily, so you can get something in it very quickly. Usually their lead time for the following day is 11 a.m. for the following day. However, Souderton Independent is a weekly newspaper. They say it's put out on Sunday, it'll have a Sunday date on it, but it actually gets mailed or delivered on Fridays. And you have to have
Even Friday or following Friday.
that. Like it will say, it'll have Sunday's date on it, but it comes from the mail Friday.
The following Friday,
Friday.
the Friday before.
And you have to have everything
Probably.
to them if you wanted in that newspaper by Tuesday. 11 a.m.
so their publication needs to be Wednesdays.
It's all because they've consolidated some newspapers that Montgomery News is who owns the Independent. They own a bunch of, and for paper, it is a bunch of newspaper, so they have to coordinate all of that.
And the township's required to, you know, to advertise each meeting, so that's something that we do each month. Or each meeting, correct? You do that monthly for all the meetings, or?
So
There is-
how about email constant contact, what's your lead time?
Same as. We'll just state you.
24 hours.
Hour,
So if we put
to
20,
get it out there.
the highway board,
The road signs?
the red signs,
They're the road signs on the two. Yeah,
So, and get better results by. I think raising the.
so,
So if we had to list something a week, is it like you figure within a week, you know, it would get changed?
I'm gonna give him all the dates in advance for everything I know about. So I do it at the beginning of the year, we set it on the date, and he will go on to that paper. And I know he's never filled, he hasn't filled me in.
So as a general reference, we list the lead time on those highway billboards as a year.
Well. I would say yes, because. You know, they put other things on there, so I don't know what the schedule, I know what theirs is. I don't know what theirs is, so. They put things on there like, you know, chicken barbecue, chicken dinner, you know, and club meetings and blah, blah, blah. Those signs were built by the current organization, that's who built those, you know, they probably. 50 years ago, they built those signs as they give to the township, so we did not do anything for them. Over the township. And. To know what else they put on there, I mean, I've never seen them empty. Never seen something that doesn't have anything. On it, so.
So
And so if I were to call and say, can you get something on there tomorrow? He's probably gonna say, sorry, I got the chicken barbecue, but I can't put anything on.
Or is it?
That's their schedule. But now they're.
so hypothetically, if there's something of importance or dire that we felt needed to go up, we could always reach out and say, hey, just have a discussion, but right now it sounds like it's being done. Mhm. Right,
No,
those places.
That only convey one message at a time, or there's no rotation on it of multiple messages.
I don't know if you would know this, and it's not even necessarily important, but I also have curiosity, is it always the same message on both sides? Thought so, I wasn't sure off the top of my head.
I think. They do it together.
Okay. Well, that's great, it's great to do that, that's something to
Okay.
explore.
I'll go for 1 year. It's work here. The newsletter,
Newsletters. 2 months in advance, like right now, I'm doing the newsletter for fall, winter.
Mhm.
And everybody has until the end of September to get me their information. And then. They put it together. Drafts come to me back and forth. Then it has to be printed, then it goes to the place to get mail from, and then they get mailed. And so. We usually back it up 6 weeks from when. We want it in someone's mailbox. Our aim is to get it in the boxes before Thanksgiving.
yeah, so 2 months lead time.
I'd say at least 2 months, yeah.
Door signs. 24 hours.
Yeah.
Is there a bulletin board here, bulletin boards in here, and then also at the golf center.
We don't have a bulletin board,
Okay,
but we do have
We have like a pamphlet crowd.
Yeah.
okay.
that's a,
At the same time too, I noticed. That we put signs up, as you can see out there, you know, on the desk itself, on the windows, so. Our quick reference guys up there, I think I saw the Rotary's upcoming Halloween thing in there on the way in, so.
I'm calling that the door signs.
Yeah,
And the office pins.
and we'll look into,
The
golf
golf center.
definitely worth looking into if they have any kind of. I'm not sure if they have any bulletin boards or any kind of signage.
park kiosks, getting something into the park kiosks.
Parks would probably be, I'd say at least a week. I would need to contact Amy,
So we'll say 2 weeks.
Sue Birch with the park board. And if she's on vacation or something, you know, she'll come in and she'll pick something up. And get it right away.
Facebook,
That's as quick as contact, just have to click an extra button.
that 24 hours. The police mobile sign that we talked about, wasn't clear. I mean, did we list that? Is that actually an option, even if it's for, I know that we could list it as emergency only kind of thing?
I kind of see it as emergency only, but then again, like I said, the Country Fair days, I'm not sure. I think that's, we don't micromanage that, that would be, utilize that, but I think if there's something neat, it would be worth discussion, can we use that as an option, but. I'm pretty sure that's used for. Yeah, that's something that, again, I let the police do a good job with that. That's.
Right, so if
That's.
we're gonna list it, then we have to find out from them, like, what their lead time is.
And I just kind of see it as like for us in our communications like that, I just kind of see it as emergency unless, unless otherwise, hey, we can help you with that, but that's not something I see as something we would be like, oh, we gotta do this.
Right.
It could be, if we have to look into it, but.
And we could list, how the attribute says emergency. The Main Street banners. That's.
Sometimes that.
And I can, I don't see that as a viable.
There's no lead time, there's a lag time.
Yeah, it's a matter of printing this on. It seems more of a hassle. Is it effective? Yeah, absolutely. We could always draw straws here and make one of us a sign guy, person, spin the sign around, meeting tonight. That would be effective too. I think that crosses off most of the channels.
Well, it crosses off like 2 things of that. So next would be the parameters of each channel. Are there limits in terms of the size of the message? Are there limits in terms of what you can put on the message? Those kinds of things. And we're at 8:30, so we can always, I can start the list, so we have a more formal list and, fill this in.
I didn't want to assign you to that, but if you wouldn't mind, I think that's, now that you said it, I think that's great. I think if you can do that and, start discussion, that would be easier, I think, to see everything. But yeah, you're absolutely right. What limitations do we have? We can go from there. Obviously, this one might be good, but okay, that would require this much and, can't drive and read too much at the same time, kind of idea.
And sometimes it's just physical.
Yeah,
Depending
yeah.
on.
Of how we do it. And, we're very grateful, but one thing that this just even discussion reveals is we, appreciation of the volunteers that we have making this stuff happen and getting the information out there. And just something that we have to be aware of too, that, we have what we have and we can keep going with that. So I think it's great. And I think this is something that we can put on for next month as well. But we have 2 great things to go into, for next month. But before I close out on this, I mean, we've discussed a lot. We have some, 6 different options on here. We kind of covered in a larger group, but any other comments on this before moving? I'm okay going to next month on this as well. Very good. In regards to new business, just to go back again, we have now. We have the resident welcome package that we can look back into. I think that's worthwhile. Now that we have the Leeds place with the zip code $65, we can discuss that, what options we have. And as well as our facilities, what we want to do with that. We kind of discussed a little bit of how we want to reach out to them. We put down some great questions. which is, can we have other, members of the outside community? Are we able to record? Be able to have that access? And do you have the room?
Mhm.
And do you want us there? So I think discussing that next time, possibly I would like to maybe even put together just a letter that would formally email, but that would also give us some guidance of what we want to say, cover that. So I think that's worthwhile listening to. And again, I great job on the text message alerts, everybody here. Thank you. I think it's great. It'll be interesting as it goes out there, as word gets around. Obviously, it's in its infancy, but and we might not be reaching those who would utilize it yet. But that's something worthwhile too to discuss. As always, okay, how can we continue to reach people and let us know the good things that are happening here? Any other comments? It's a good meeting, everybody. It was a very effective. Got a lot covered. Thank you, John, for the notes. And with that, one more time with public comment. If anybody else has any comments they'd like to share, thank you to all those team. Seeing no comments, I think we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you, Jean. Second. Yes, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Could hang out here, but I think we are good. Thank you, everybody, for
Now that
great.
it's getting dark earlier.
I know, it is true. Thank you, Holly, as well.
Thank you. Thank John for his notes.
So I was trying to keep up and watching yours. I'm like, I'm gonna